Hello and welcome to this special session of the Data Leadership Collective presented by etnow.in and powered by IBM. Across India and South Asia, digital sovereignty has moved beyond data residency and compliance. For today's data and technology leaders, it is about controlling where workloads run, how AI uses data, and ensuring every output is trusted and auditable. Today, we explore how enterprises are building a sovereign control plane across data, AI, and infrastructure, enabling rapid innovation without compromising compliance or control. Joining me today on this special panel are four industry leaders. To my right is Mr. Mukul Jain. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Axis Max Life Insurance. Then we have Mr. Manas Mehra. He's the Global Chief Information Officer at Dabur. Then we have Ms. Shalvi Chitkara. She's the Chief Operating Officer, Agentic AI at Genpack. And finally, we have Ms. Shilaka Verma, Executive Director, Data and AI at IBM. I welcome you all, the esteemed guests. First of all, I'll start with you, Mr. Mukul. In a heavily regulated financial and personal health data environment, digital sovereignty goes well beyond simply storing data in local data centers. How does Max Life define the line between strict data control and the freedom to experiment with frontier AI models?
It's a pretty large question, but I'll try to answer that. With DPDB, data privacy and data personalization and what you can do with data and not do with data, and the consent management has become a very mainstream subject. What we are doing is establishing data privacy by design in our digital initiatives. By doing that, what we have been able to not only manage databases or where the data is lying, elements like data classifications, data governance, data lineages, and what you would send data to the frontier models for AI interventions. You don't need to send date of birth to the AI frontier model. You can just send an age and still get the same answer. So by establishing a proper data governance and a data privacy by design methodology in the organization, we are trying to change the culture where everyone believes data is a critical asset which needs to be protected.
All right. Mr. Manas, I would like to know from you. As a major Indian consumer enterprise, your data spans rural supply chains, distributor networks, and regional consumer touchpoints. What does data sovereignty mean in practice when you want to plug this distributed enterprise data into modern cloud and AI platforms?
Yeah, so Aman, I think we tend to keep things simple, right? Fundamentally, no matter what is the scenario, there are three basic principles that you have to follow here, right? And these are the principles, thankfully, not coming new with this wave of AI. And they are data ownership, data processing, and data visibility. Now, while we try to answer these questions, it is amply clear that who will do what in the entire value chain, whether it is a use case where I am trying to understand the business dynamics, whether it is a use case where I am trying to infer the internal productivity, or whether it is a use case where I am benchmarking various KPIs internally to the organization or externally to the organization. And thankfully, we are now better prepared in terms of technology than ever. See, FMCG sector always had a multitude of data at their disposal, right? And now the question for us is very basic, that whether you are looking at the quantity of data, or you have to answer a question that why you need this data, right? So keeping things in a way where the technology is able to supplement us. And like you mentioned earlier as well, right, that it's a distributed network, right? So governance plays a key role. And when I say about governance, it's not only meetings, it's the understanding of the requirements at the compliance level, at the law level, at the regulatory level. So these are the things that we keep asking ourselves, not only when we start an initiative, but through the initiative, because we have to understand whether it has answered what we are looking for. And this is helping us to help maintain all the other scenarios that you mentioned.
Okay, Shalvi. As a global operational services provider managing enterprise transformation for diverse clients, how do you see enterprise definitions of data sovereignty evolving from basic data at rest residency checks to active control planes over AI processing?
Actually, over the last few years, to the point you made, I mean, the data requirements have really gone up, and it has changed a lot with the regulatory framework coming, and that's coming with the requirements of AI. And obviously, as AI scales, data becomes very, very critical. We are seeing a diverse set of requirements coming across different sectors. There are sector-specific requirements in terms of the regulatory requirements, how you want to store the data, how you want to use the data, where do the models take the data and actually act on it also. And there are regional. The two together is putting a lot of pressure for organizations to start thinking of data architecture. And data architecture in a very different way. It is just not about where I store my data, but will it transfer? Who will have the rights? How the model will use. So I think all that is completely transforming the entire enterprise architecture designs. Earlier designs were more focused on what is my ERP, what is my orchestration layer. Now everyone's talking about what is my data architecture. And I think that with governance becomes a big shift. And people have also started talking about trust to data. I need to trust the data, and I need to know which one I use and where I use. So I think that's the fundamental shift we are seeing across sectors. The regulated sectors are seeing a lot more in terms of the requirements, not to say the others aren't. So it's a very interesting era of how the world will shape up in the next 1 to 1.5 years with different laws coming in.
Interesting times ahead, definitely. Okay, Shlaka, from a fundamental technology standpoint, how has digital sovereignty shifted from an infrastructure checkbox into an active control plane governing data pipelines, model inference, and cross-platform workflows?
Sure. So, see, Aman, you have already heard 3 different flavors of industry. We have FMCG, we have
Right.
FSI, and we also have a multinational company like Genpact who serves multiple of clients, right, to have on their perspective. Now, what's happening is sovereignty at some point was where is my data and who controls it conversation. But it has moved forward from there. And the recent geopolitical issues have actually given us a lot of clarity on what it means to be really a sovereign enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say data remains a pillar in which the sovereignty will be addressed. And it is really about where is my data, more importantly, like Shalvi said, who is processing it for what, and then eventually the understanding of processing is reaching whom, right? So that becomes the sovereignty of your data. But then there is also operational sovereignty that is coming in, which basically means that even if my data is with me, who has ability to modify something in it, or who has ability to influence its availability or its resiliency, right? Which is more like, okay, do I control the entire software supply chain that governs my data eventually? So that is the operational sovereignty that is coming in. And then the third pillar is really the technology sovereignty, and I alluded to that in the morning's conversation, right? It's really about, and it's a very subtle shift, which it basically says that whatever technology choices I'm making today, how fast can I change them? So what is my optionality? How fast can I change them? And if the provider stops to exist in my ecosystem, what is that will break? And can I ensure that my critical systems are continue to operating without breaking something, right, immediately? So that is the third technology sovereignty piece. And then the last one really is what we see as a transformation, like AI coming in, and AI is almost, so it's almost like saying my data is in my control and I have managed it well, but guess what, this data is actually sent via some prompt to somebody else, and so the information or the IP that I was trying to protect in the data now lies with a model. And now do I have full control on what the model knows and how that information would be processed downstream, right? So that is where that AI sovereignty coming in, both from the training as well as the inference perspective. So I would broadly now categorize sovereignty in those 4 pillars, and that's how the enterprises are looking at it.
All right. So Mukul, let's discuss in detail about the current architectural challenges and the scope for improvement. So life insurance relies heavily on legacy operational systems alongside modern digital front ends. What is your biggest architectural bottleneck when trying to create unified data lineage across these systems without risking data lineage?
We have been in this journey of modernizing our legacy core systems. These are platforms written in COBOL, have been existing for 50 years, but they are the most resilient and robust platforms even that exist today. You can't necessarily change and rip and replace these kind of platforms, but you have to still work in a digital native era with these legacy platform. There are 2-3 things that we have done. One, to continue to sustain the agility. We are the second organization in the world to have moved our core system to cloud. And we have chosen clouds also as horses for courses. So our core system is on a different cloud and our digital platforms are on a different cloud. So that has allowed us to continue to maintain the agility in managing these two disparate systems and continue to run IT in the agile fashion. From a data standpoint, the very well defined ways of moving to a data lake architecture, so where data from multiple sources is getting consolidated, having a good data lineage while building this data lake architecture where core system data and the digital system data converge and create inferences which the application can use. There is still an element of delay in data because these core systems are batch processing systems and sometimes the real-time information is not available. But we are at it modernizing this core platform independently and creating this data lake architecture and APIizing, building APIs on the top of it, which is microservices enabled. So 80% of my transactions today happen digitally, and the customer can do it themselves, and of course the back office team can do it along with them. There is no straightforward clear answer on by when I will have all the problems solved, but significant progress has been made, and we would be one of the most agile organization in terms of core system data management, I would say.
Perfect. Okay, Manas. FMCG data is often fragmented across ERPs, third-party logistics, and unstructured field reports. Where do you see the biggest gaps in current enterprise data architectures when trying to make that data ready for large language models?
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right when you say that we inherit a fragmented ecosystem of data.
Yes.
But the flip side or the other side of this is that we traditionally enjoyed a lot of data.
Okay.
Large huge flavors of data were at our disposal. Now, when you look at this ecosystem and make them more coherent, one thing that we need to solve as an organization is that how you make it future ready, right? Because at that time, the intent was, okay, the more data I own, there is a larger influence that I can exert on, right? Because the platforms were totally different. I was not into a targeted campaigning of an individual choices, but it was a mass thought that we used to think traditionally that if it is good for myself, it will be good for everyone else. Now, how you make this data future ready is one of the question that we need to solve. Now, how we are doing that? FMCG is not different when we talk about this problem, right? Every organization traditionally had various pockets of data sources, both internally and externally coming out of it. Now, do I have an option to change everything? Probably not, and not many will go for that because of the efforts, the cost that involves, the time that gets involved into that. So what we are trying to do here is we are looking at the solution that thankfully was already there. How smart my data lake can become, how smart my data warehouse can become, how agile it can become, right? Like Mukul was mentioning that they have a huge repository of traditional applications that are doing their purpose well even now. And that's hold true for us as well. Now, what is the key enabler here? That how you are able to look at that data and how you can put up a framework around that so that the right model is sitting on top of it. So even before we decide on the model, we look at the discovery process of the hygiene and the quality of the data. And more importantly, which I keep on telling all my stakeholders, that how I will sustain that data. Because it is very easy for me to do a POC and just show the results and get a wow from the business stakeholders. But then the struggle is, will I be able to sustain and maintain it on a frequency basis? So for us, how we are bringing it together, overarchingly, these systems that we have built up, we are looking at those systems from pipelining perspective. We are looking at centralized data repositories from framework perspective, from sustainability and hygiene perspective, and then lastly the model is coming into the picture. Because see, these AI models are smart enough, right? It's more of I might be comfortable with X rather than Y, and they have to work on top of it, right? And obviously, as they are evolving, we are seeing that they are each coming with their own strengths. Because ultimately, the market has to play on the strengths, right? Today, it's a lot of democracy happening where everyone is trying to do everything, right? From AI modeling perspective. So for us, the choice of modeling is becoming the last thing in the whole use case. But then knowing what you have, having a process of discovery that continues to run on all our resources is the key thing. And then obviously the last thing comes into the picture.
Okay. Shalvi, across the enterprise landscapes you help modernize, what are the primary structural frictions you observe between business teams demanding rapid AI deployment and enterprise architects enforcing data boundaries?
Very pertinent, and this is like a everyday struggle, I think, in terms of business saying, I need to make this happen quick, fast, and there comes, these are the guardrails and the boundary, and I think for every CIO organization, this is a daily struggle. We can define all the rules, but how do you govern it? I think the key here is one stakeholder is looking at faster growth, the other is looking at long-term protection. So it's not about which takes priority, it's about how you design your systems together, bringing the two together. In fact, as we are building our own product suites and some of the stuff, what we are saying is the entire design methodology of what you build, from actually requirement gathering to design, to the engineering build, to the run. Everywhere, how do you integrate these requirements from a regulatory requirement, infosec, security together? And that toll gates with each individual having a stake, each team, I would say, to say, yes, it makes sense. Because in the environment today with Agentic AI, things can go anywhere. And if you don't bring them in the design and try to bring it later. So for example, if I forget in my feature build to take user consent, and I say at the end, oh shit, I forgot that feature, that's a big problem. So I think that's what I would say. It's a methodology which has to evolve. It's not the same old traditional way of building. It is a way where to come together to drive the balance. And I think since our childhood, all of us have seen this balance. We want to play more, we want to eat more chocolates, but our parents tell us do this. So I think that's the balance that we have to do here also.
Right, perfectly said. Okay, Shlaka. When an organization's data is fragmented across on-premises servers and multiple hyperscaler environments, how do platforms like watsonx and Open Lineage frameworks help maintain a single metadata view without moving the underlying data?
Yeah, so I mean, you have heard again multiple point of views on why certain applications and certain data will live where it is born, right? And eventually you want to embrace an architecture where you don't want everything to keep coming at a single place for you to really just govern. So those monolithic large data lake house concepts will have to sort of dissolve in the new scheme of things. But we'll still have to maintain the sovereignty and we still have to maintain the compliance guardrails, to your point, right? So basically, we need to start looking at our internal data management as really a graph problem. So it's basically saying, what is it that I can keep on continuously discovering, and what is it that I can sort of enforce as governance versus bring observability in so that I am able to find the evidence of what is happening. And all of that can happen with maybe 2 or 3 core architectural principles. One is embrace open standards everywhere. So that what happens? So like for example, if you are able to say, it doesn't matter where my data rests, but I will always store it in an open format, maybe open tables or a Parquet, whatever works. then I've suddenly liberated myself to say, if I need a different kind of query engine, I don't really have to transform the data. I can use the same data because a new query engine will ingest that data directly from that location, right? So something like that. So similarly, open lineage solves the problem of metadata. So basically you're saying, irrespective of where and in which format I store the data in which lakehouse, I will expose the metadata catalog in a common open standard, which allows me to discover from all the disparate systems all kind of metadata. And then I can build maybe something on top, which is like, say, a knowledge catalog or a business glossary. So for example, if I were to say customer income, it may reflect in Oracle database where it is captured first time, maybe as, say, a monthly salary. And then somebody under downstream has, say, wrote some Informatica pipeline or data stage pipeline, has converted this into, say, annualized income. And it is somewhere in somebody's data lake house, right? So maybe a Databricks or Watson Extra data. And then somebody is using that to show, say, a derived customer score, which is again going in some kind of dashboard reporting. So I need to know in what all formats income field is actually persisting across my multiple data stores, and metadata can do that trick for you, right? So and it also solves a very different sovereignty problem, and maybe a DPDP Act will sort of come in and it will say, not just I need to know, I need to have a consent. So if as a customer I say delete this information, you as a provider need to know what all needs to sort of get erased, right? So it solves those kind of problems. And so I believe the first architectural principle that we need to sort of think about is open standards everywhere as much as possible, which will allow you to sort of unleash this without really moving data massively. The second principle here, I would say, is what you alluded to, is basically think about governance upfront, which means you don't have to think about governance as something that gets bolted on once something is delivered or is into production, but you have to think about it towards your left hand side during the development, and more importantly your ability to stay agile, because the governance in the AI world will keep on changing. Our regulators are learning, our policymakers are learning, so this will keep changing. Now how can I capture a change in policy like a skill, and how can I embed this as my enterprise knowledge right at the point of insertion, so that the entire CI/CD pipeline can get modified if there is a change in the policy, right? So those two architectural principles, if we are able to embrace, I believe we can sort of streamline lot of data lineage or visibility problems.
Alright, Mukul, let's talk about incorporating agentic AI into existing architecture. So, as the industry shifts from passive query bots to autonomous AI agents capable of handling claims processing and policy underwriting, how are you re-architecturing your data access control so agents act only within strict authorization boundaries?
Interesting question and a pertinent question. I think all of us have gone through multiple stages of evolution of digitalization, computer coming in, and Gen AI or AI is today that third wave or fourth wave, whatever number you want to call it. But we have seen it everywhere that the shift does not happen overnight. We are in a human in the loop era where everything, somebody human looks at it and confirms that this is okay. We will move to a human on the loop era where there will be transactions which will be done autonomously, but there is human who is able to do quality check or validate certain scenarios and confirm, give assurance that things are okay. And then there will be a human out of the loop era where everything will be completely autonomous and go through it. And underwriting and claims, FSI, specifically insurance company, exist only for these two purposes. We underwrite people that who should be insured, and then in case of a claim event, we pay the claim. And these are very sensitive transactions. What we are doing is going through these three cycles of processes. We are observing what underwriter does There is a program internally which we call as underwriting twin. This is to simulate what an underwriter does. But there is a lot of resident knowledge which an underwriter has. Some of it can be codified, some may not be codified, but we will see where we can push the boundaries around it. But the guardrails for sure would be there. We have an insurer, we have a regulator, and we have customers to answer to. So explainability will remain a key component, auditability will remain a key component around it. On the claim side of it, it's a very sensitive area because the customer or the dependent on the customer are in distress. We are going to go very slow on that process from an agentic standpoint, but we will leverage AI models because fraud, being able to correlate events to the outcomes is still something a human may not be able to do properly, but whereas data and AI could be able to help us do it. So this is how we are thinking about it. But the era of agentic is started. We are leveraging it in pockets, but with these three mechanism of human in the loop, human on the loop, and human out of the loop, and we will see which works better.
Okay, Manas. If autonomous agents start orchestrating dynamic inventory rebalancing or trade promotion planning across your supply chain, what guardrails must be embedded in your data architecture to ensure real-time decisions remain auditable?
So see, I think we have to realize that this is a journey. So it will not happen today or suddenly tomorrow. And there's a lot of planning that has already gone into the entire end goal of making things autonomous. Very simply put, while autonomous is the rage right now, but organizations like us have to really be careful when you are putting it up into the actual use case. Because see, you have to realize that 90% is not good enough. Humans operate at much greater efficiency, but we have a real-time inclination to review and do course corrections, right? From guardrail standpoint, I think I agree with Mukul when he mentioned that there will be phasing here as well where humans have to be kept in the loop. So are we looking at completely removing humans out of the picture? No, absolutely not. But we are making them realize that the offerings that are coming up, these AI, these agents are their digital colleagues, right? So they should not be seen as a replacement tool. When we talk about autonomous or autonomy, we are telling them that these enablers will help you do your work in a much more efficient manner so that you can prioritize the problem at hand and not get disturbed with the other happenings. That's point number one. So the guardrail number one is humans are still in the loop, humans are owners of that decision. The guardrail number two, it's slightly more from the data aspects, right? That what data accessibility you are providing these agents, right? Because see, hallucination is a real fact, right? Which we say as a confused thinking in AI world is hallucination, right? And you would rather know of it upfront rather than after rather executing the decision in the market, right? Because we are a brand conscious organization and industry. So what is the quality of data? What accessibility you have provided your agents? And that's where our previous discussions on the controls of the data comes into the picture. Last but not the least, what is the compliance and government framework which involves DPDP, which involves other aspects coming into it. But very importantly, cybersecurity. See, the more we are going digital, the more agents are coming in. Cyber is important more than ever, right? I don't want a rogue agent, and at the same time, I don't want an agent that can be influenced very easily by certain extraneous factors. So how I am able to control the behavior, the output of my agents in a manner so that they are able to do the business intended function only, right? And they shouldn't become out of their remit. So cyber is much more important, I would say, than it was earlier, while it was always important, right? It will be the pillar around which we will build all this, right? So I think these are the 3-4 factors that in a way creates a guardrail. But I think if I delve into it a little bit, I think essentially I would not start seeing them guardrails from here on. It is more of the design principles that my colleagues were referring to. It is the putting the thought from day zero on the design itself about these aspects rather than they coming as an afterthought or a course correction. And then seamlessly you will have autonomous agents, but for us they are digital colleagues.
Perfectly said. Shall we? Agentic AI requires multi-step reasoning, tool execution, and contextual memory. What architectural changes are required to support agentic workflows across enterprise clients without inflating compute costs or losing operational traceability?
See, I think let me just start what my colleague was saying. We have to be very clear as we are designing these systems, it has to be designed with human in the loop. I think the second part we've discussed is around observability, and I'll bring all these design principles together. I think as we think of agentic systems, it has to be thought about first, it has what business problem am I solving? The most important thing. To solve this business problem, what is the data that I need? And hence, how do I want to orchestrate what models to use? Versus starting, this is the stack that I want to use. So I think that's the first step, a fundamental shift from past of what problem, hence what data, and not the full data, because there's abundance of data like you talked about in the CPG case. Picking that up and then building. That's one shift. The second piece I would call, and actually we talk about it in 4 things: data debt, tech debt, process debt, and talent debt. I think when we design agentic AI systems, all 4 come into play. So the first I talked about was data, but also, is your technology stack the right stack? Is it going to enable what you want to do? Will it follow the requirements from a regulatory perspective? That's the second piece we need to think about. Third, you could build any agentic system. If your process is broken and you're training on a broken process, it'll not fix. So that goes without saying. And then comes the talent piece, which is about, are my users looking at it as a digital colleague to what you talked about? Is it something that I'm leveraging as an aid versus thinking about what it does? And then people have to evolve. The roles will evolve. Today I'm doing coding. Tomorrow I'm going to become a reviewer. Today I'm processing a claims. Tomorrow I'm an expert who looks at X level above claims. Can I generalize and look at the trends, etc. So I think those are 4 guiding principles, I would say, for any agentic platform solution that you design that have to be kept in loop. And ultimately it is what the business wants and the consumer wants. That experience layer comes into play.
Perfect. Okay, Shlaka. With developer and operations tooling shifting toward multi-agents platforms such as IBM Bob, how can enterprises safely embed agentic workflows into their core development lifecycle while keeping automated actions governed and observable?
So I think I alluded to that a little bit earlier, saying everything needs to shift left. But more importantly, so like I think we just had a conversation on autonomous versus human in the loop, right? And while the current set of technologies look like for most of the scenarios you will need human in the loop, we will all have to agree to the fact that the journey is towards autonomous world more and more. So everything that we develop, we need to be very clear on why are we having a human in the loop and what things, if changed, that decision needs to be revisited. And those all need to be plugged into the architectures upfront. The way I think about the autonomous versus human in the loop is really about the cost of reversing the decision. So is the decision that the agent is making, can it be reversed quickly, and can it be reversed cheaply? And cheap is not just in terms of financial, but also the brand value, the visibility, etc., right? So if these 2 factors are taken into consideration, then I think we could come at some kind of logic to say here are the scenarios that cannot go autonomous today with the current state of technology, but if these things changed, we can sort of course correct there. So that is one way of thinking about how we approach autonomous. Now coming back to the developer world, right? What happens is developers, I mean the current tooling is really allows developers to write bunch of code very fast. And for a lot of greenfield developments, that is very valuable. but it is not so in the enterprise applications, where the risk profile of what is it that you are trying to change and the economics of really making a change to a complex enterprise application, what outweighs what the tool is capable of doing. So ability of the enterprise to really start building the guardrails and policies and capture them more like skills with which the agents will work, or the coding agents will work, right? And then you think about the entire SDLC life cycle, like, am I able to plan? Am I able to then reason with my entire code base? Am I able to capture what used to be the tribal knowledge of my enterprise into a documented enterprise knowledge? And then can I enable the agent to use that knowledge while they are thinking about developing the code, including policy and the governance framework? And then can the agent, if somebody else is doing this job, can I actually have an agent to develop the test cases to really test against what is it that I want to achieve and then validate? If we are able to envisage this entire pipeline via the AI assistants, then we would have a lot more value in the way we deliver the code or deliver the outcomes to the enterprise. Now, when we try to do this entire pipeline management, we have to start thinking about agents, the point that you mentioned, right, as identities rather than a tool. And the moment we shift our gear to think about AI as almost a parallel to a human, we will start enforcing everything that we enforce on our resources, like the identity, access, authorization. And those are really the important guardrails within which all the, whether it is semi-autonomous or the autonomous, all kind of agents need to operate.
All right.
I think I'll just add an interesting thought that we were discussing the other day within our organization. See, the decision of autonomy will not be technical alone.
Yeah.
It will be who will take the ownership. If something goes wrong,
Yeah.
will the human or the concerned business function take ownership that, hey, these agents did something that they were not supposed to do and I take the ownership? Or they will look at IT that, no,
That's
you build
okay.
the agents, so it's your ownership. And it is where the change management will play differently in this era. So change management in this era is not that I will teach you about AI or I will teach you how to use that agent. For us at business, as business ITs, the change management this time is who owns.
Yeah.
So it cannot be IT project alone, it will fail. It cannot be business project alone, it will fail. It will be a joint ownership. So in happy scenarios, everything is right. But things, when they go wrong, who owns it? And that's the chain management organizations have to build rather than only focusing on the technical aspect. Because see, technology will not fail. I firmly believe technology is here to succeed. It has worked everywhere, it has to work for you. Now, chain management definitions will start changing as we are going through AI, because it's the ownership angle, not that I will teach Aman that, okay, you have to use this. No, Aman will know already.
Yes.
He will teach me rather than how you have to use, why you haven't used these XYZ parameters or variables. So that's how this will evolve from here on.
Actually, you talked about who owns. We were having a similar discussion saying with autonomous cars, if they make an accident, is it the owner of the car who's responsible or is it the maker of the car?
Yeah.
So it's very similar. If something goes wrong, is it the business or the CIO org which sort of takes ownership?
So even plus one to that, and lot of things, so like even within IBM we went through a massive internal transformation across our HR, IT, procurement, finance functions, right? So lot of, if you look at the way the transformation started, it started from almost reimagining the things, because every time you think about a process transformation with IT, first of all you have to really just validate whether the process is valid and is required anymore, because you carry a lot of debt there itself, right? So you could reimagine the way the things could happen in the new era and code for that rather than coding for old ways of working.
Okay, Mukul, let's move our focus towards balancing compliance with business growth. So earlier you mentioned briefly about the DPDP framework. So under the DPDP framework, how are you structuring customer consent management and data lifecycle governance so regulatory compliance acts as a engine of customer trust rather than a friction point against the business growth?
Insurance as an industry works on the principle of trust, and
That's the point.
and of course with DPDP and otherwise also You build trust by fulfilling your promises to the customer. Actually, we don't sell any product, we sell only a promise. And for that promise, the only thing that we get from the customer is data. Being a good custodian of this data is very important, and DPDP has now codified what you need to do with this data. As a insurance organization and regulatorily wise, we need to keep the data of the customer for a purpose while they are active with us, and even after that for 10 years. What we are doing is building consent as a design principle, and now privacy by design is now become a very mainstream activity across our entire SDLC life cycle. So not only businesses, but technology folks are also asking, do I need this data? Why do I need this data? Do I have the consent for this data? What can I do with this consent of the data? What is the mandatory consent where I need this data for sure to be able to give a policy itself? And what are the optional consent like marketing or cross sells and stuff like that? This is now from the entire life cycle of the customer onboarding, where we prospect the customer, the prospect becomes a customer, and then it remains with us. It is now being percolated across my ecosystem, and data lake architecture helps us do it, and while we capture it at different point in time, but allows it to centralize it through a consent management program. What we are also doing on the top of it is, I think a lot of us were talking about it, who has access to this data? Even if you have access, what can you see with the data? Even if you can see the data, what you can do with the data? And even if you are doing a processing, where will the data be residing subsequently after the processing? So all this is now being entrenched in our entire ecosystem, whether it is business who is consuming this data for their operational purposes, and whether it is technology who is building these data products for the business. So it's become a very mainstream activity. Of course, there is a timeline of DPDP compliance as well, which is coming next year, and we are well on that way to ensure the customer trust that they placed on us remains on the data trust as well.
Perfect. Okay, Manas. Consumer enterprises need to experiment rapidly with personalized marketing and demand sensing. How do you give your digital and product teams the sandbox freedom to innovate using hyperscaler AI while maintaining zero trust internal data policies?
So see, the approach here is federated always, right? So that again the principles remain same. How I can isolate if things go wrong. Yes, you have to understand a lot of personalization goes into the sector where we operate in, because gone are the days where one size is fit all, right? And thankfully now the mediums are much more specific to what they were earlier. Now coming on specificity to freedom to explore. See, when I talk about federated structure is this federated structure in a diverse environment that we operate in, not only in India but abroad as well, is stemming from the fact is that what is a business KPI you are trying to influence? Because see, ultimately, I'm not an IT company where I have to create a technology for the technology's sake. I have to use and consume that technology for a specific KPI that I need to influence. Now, everything or anything that we do within the organization has to have a specific business purpose around it. Now, when that is clear, thankfully, in the earlier part of the conversation when we're talking about that, how you're managing your data, that's the key right now. That what data, what confidentiality or the classification of that data or segmentation of data it alludes to, and what KPI you are trying to influence using that segmentation. Now, once you are aware of that, I think then you can have the freedom to explore. And see again, the fundamentals again remain same, and I think everyone has been agreeing to that point always, that what you do inside the organization is pretty much controllable, right? And if you look at whether it is GDPR of Europe and DPDP talks about, DPDP is not an inhibitor so that we start changing our thought process around. DPDP thankfully is now telling you exactly what you need to do and how you have to do, right? It's all about telling the source of data that I have taken your data with your consent and I will use it for these specific purposes only. So long you are following those guidelines, right? it is absolutely fine to use that. And obviously, if you are going ahead with the timeline, there are provisions that will help me to go back to the source of the data, whether it is a consumer, whether it's a source system, to tell them, hey, I need to use this data for a specific purpose. Do I have your consent around it? So see, our message to the business teams is pretty simple. There's no need to be worried about these regulations that are coming in. There's no need to be worried about the AI bandwagon that is coming in, because anyhow you will see traditionally also organizations like ours were following the processes, right? Now we are getting extra support through these regulations to understand what we have to do, what we don't have to do, and if something happens, what I have to do. Otherwise, it's a good conscience of an organization that we were free to choose what we do, and we'll think that we have done the right thing, but it might not have been enough. So yes, does a lot of things changes from the business perspective? No, absolutely not. They have the freedom to explore so long they respect the boundaries that these compliances are bringing in, so that they understand what we call a responsible AI. Right? Don't use prompts that will put your data in an unregulated internet environment where you don't have access to. Now this is where again the culture shift happens. This is where we as CIO office are responsible to work with HR, to work with the business functions to have them sanitize about what the job fundamentals are, right? So it cannot be add-on. See, ultimately, when we used to say IT as an enabler function or a backroom function, right? I have been looking at my decades in IT, and I started with a backroom function, right? Then we started as an enabler function. Now there is no enabler function. We are saying that the boundaries are blurring. I don't own any KPI, right? On time, under budget. No one even looks at that scorecard right now. It's more of how the delivery was consumed by the business teams. So yes, fundamentally, do I want to change anything with regards to freedom on a sandbox? Absolutely not. That defeats the purpose. Fundamentally, how I approach it, you are free to use, but this is how you have to follow the process. These are the tools at your disposal, much more powerful, but these are some of the do's and some of the don'ts that you have to respect all the time. And last but not the least, I am prepared with my technology guardrails to monitor everything, whether it is cyber, whether it is any legal, whether it is compliance aspect, because ultimately we are humans.
Right.
And actually, I so agree to your point what you said. It is not a reason to delay the transformation journey or experimentation. It is a reason to put controls and make sure everyone is educated. I think that's the shift, and people should look at it like that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when scaling AI across diverse business units, how do you prevent governance and auditability requirements from turning into an operational bottleneck that slows down delivery velocity?
So, and great question by the way, because we work across clients in different sectors. And one of the big things that come across is the entire governance and performance of AI. And as we move towards autonomous, I don't think we are there. It takes time. But this becomes a very critical thing. So we've come up with a concept which we are calling Agentic Command Center in Unpack, which is anything that's produced in an agentic workflow or an agentic process, the new defined operations. There are three things we will always monitor and look at. The first is the business performance and the operation performance. That is paramount. If it's supposed to do ABC, is it doing or not? Is it giving desired results? So that's the first piece. We will monitor whether claims were settled on time, to your point, were trade promotions rightly aligned in the CPG company. That's like business performance. It shifted from what was the turnaround time or efficiency. The second set of metrics that we started governing is around the agents, which are your colleagues to say, did the agent perform the desired time? How much time did it take? Did it go a little off and took much longer because it says some wrong data has come in? Was the agent up? If an agent by any chance goes down, or you identify something and you want to remove, what is the backup planning? So the entire resilience framework comes in there. And the third piece we've started governing is around technology. Was my infra up? How much tokens was I using? Because sometimes a lot of token usage could say something is going off. So identifying those parameters within, so we have a 12-point RAI framework which talks about explainability, traceability, governance, etc. So that's how we've designed this to say any agentic operations or process that we'll do go forward. These three things we need to monitor and make sure we deliver the desired results. because it is not just about data, it's just not about technology or process, like I said, it's about the business outcome. So that's where we start with and sort of get to. And it's a huge shift, by the way. It's a huge shift for people because it's very easy to say when you're looking at performance metrics for an individual, you know he's supposed to do this or settle so many claims or apply this, but the moment you shift, oh my God, I'm doing with him. So to the point you made earlier, who's responsible? Who's accountable? I think those things start coming in the definition phase. And most of the organizations we are working have also a responsible AI governance body or an AI audit committee, some form of that. So working very closely with them and defining those and putting the desired things in the contract. That's how we are sort of looking at it today.
Okay. Coming to you, Shalaka. How do automated data protection tools like IBM Guardium help enterprises proactively identify blind spots and enforce data safety in real time, avoiding manual governance overhead as AI workloads scale?
So again, going back to the principles of governance, and I think you alluded to that, right? So what you cannot govern what you haven't discovered. So first is the discover and classification of what you have, and that needs to be very extensive across the organization, because currently, like I said, the data is living either on-premise or across multiple cloud providers. But also the fact that it is going into your prompts, it is going into the embeddings, it is going into, so there are a lot of places in which the data is getting activated. So discovering where the sensitive data lives is the primary function. The second one is monitor continuously. So everything needs to be monitored essentially. And in my mind, when I think about this, it is like discovering the bill of materials. Do you know your S-bomb, C-bomb, Q-bomb, model bomb, agent bomb, everything? And then you keep on monitoring, and the degree of monitoring can keep changing based on the sensitivity of the asset that you are trying to protect. But in principle, everything needs to be monitored. And then the third one is block selectively, because a lot of new age scenarios are real time. So the last thing you want is a rule that is coming as a hop, like a proxy for everything, right? And that sort of just delays your entire pipeline. So you have to, I think the way you have to think about in the data world, there is this medallion architecture of your raw data and then gold and a platinum copy, right? So similarly, you will have to think about the risks as the assets that need to be deeply protected versus the scenarios that need to be deeply protected versus something that can be an alert or more like an information shared for people to react after the fact versus something that can be just informatory, right? And the moment you sort of codify this whole thing and then bake it into your workflows, then you are very clear on how you are going to govern this entire ecosystem. But the important thing here is, I mean, we have talked a lot about data, who owns it, who is processing it, is it shared with somebody, can it be deleted, etc., etc. The same thing applies to models, right? Do you know which agent is using which version of which model with which kind of prompts, and is it traceable back to that decision making, that here is a model, here is the agent, within these parameters this decision was made because it accessed this kind of context. That is very important to sort of track. And then the third thing is again agent, because the agents will keep on evolving, their capabilities are going to get built over a period of time. So again, knowing whether an agent is, the moment you make an agent complex enough, you will realize that the basic things probably break. So again, going back to that original principle of, do I understand which version of agent with which kind of complexity really came to what kind of decision, right? And the most important thing in all of this is your ability to create a evidence and the audit trail for this. It's not just about whether am I doing it right, but it is really about, if contested, am I able to trace it back to this kind of detail and provide a evidence or a auditory proof either as a forensic for my analysis or even to a auditory body, right? So both things are more important. So from the tools perspective, if I look at it, again I go back to the original principles. Am I creating my architectures open enough so that they can be consumed by a audit or a governance framework which is decoupled from this entire ecosystem and is still able to discover, classify, monitor and action in that profile. That's how I would think about this broadly, Aman.
All right. So as we move into our last segment, I would like to quickly know your 2 cents on the future. So we'll start with Mukul. Over the next 12 to 18 months, what will be the single most critical architectural breakthrough required for an AI native sovereign enterprise to stay ahead?
I don't think there is a breakthrough which is required. This is standard practice. As a financial services organization, our data has to reside in India. All the public hyperscaler do provide you those capabilities. We are using a lot of AI frontier models. Many of them now have models and inferencing within India. And if they don't, the data that you're going to send to them should be anonymized, tokenized, PI information should not go, enterprise contracts to have agreement that your data will not be used for training purposes. So it's I think technology 101. Just go back to the basic principle, apply the regulatory guardrails that you have, and just deploy it at scale in the organization so that everyone in the organization follows those guardrails and regulatory boundaries which has to be applied. Nothing new specifically required to be deployed. Just follow the technology 101 prescripts.
All right. Manas, looking ahead, how do you envision the relationship between proprietary enterprise data and external frontier models changing as on-device and edge AI mature?
See, again, it has to be a federated architecture more and more as we evolve in. So yes, there will be a relationship that coexist, but then I should have a freedom to leverage technology in next 12 to 18 months to the way I want. Now, whether it is in hyperscaler cases, I think Shalaka had mentioned, right, that the problem is not from switching between hyperscalers. The problem is the technical debt that I'm carrying from my past. Because at that time, the scenarios were totally different. See, there's a very interesting concept when you look at business ITs or CIOs. We used to thrive on big relationships, and we used to look at a partner that how we will grow the relationship together. And you would see that whether it is an Indian MNC or a global MNC, you will find this even now, right? And what I mean by that is that we used to grow the relationships so that my ex-partner will be able to give me the maximum output. And most of the licensing world works in a manner where the volume plays the role. So that was the mindset, right? And that's where you would see that unknowingly or knowingly there was always a dependency that used to get created between a so-called client and a service provider. Now, how you can federalize that structure, not taking too much time into it, because see, with the transformation speed that is expected from the CIO office right now, right, it should be a blink of an eye, right? That's how you are approached at. And if you go back to the business and say, hey, wait a minute, I need to things that will be not obvious to you, you will still see an application for an application or maybe an agent, but yeah, it will not change how fundamentally you are operating. There will be less or zero patience for these kind of narratives now. Now, how it will evolve? Will it evolve overnight? No, probably not. I think panelists had mentioned, and Shalaka, you mentioned in particular, that the open ecosystem, how you can embrace that going forward. There should be a plan of action at the strategy level, at the CIO office level, that how you take care of these dependencies that has been created from the past. Then and then only you will be able to leverage the option that the other hyperscalers are offering. Then and only then you will be able to explore the option that various AI models will start offering. Because see, I'm looking at a future where technology will become truly agnostic. Because I knew Java, I knew C++, I knew Python. It was the same Manas who was there. So maybe these agents tend to operate in a world where it doesn't really matter what is behind it. And that's the beauty, right? This is what we are looking at the business side, that this is truly we want the technology to evolve so that I'm not going to that painstaking process of dependence anymore. So probably this is something that will come up, and that will automatically solve the federated structure problem or not so federated structure problem as we move into the future.
All right. Shall we? As enterprise operating models adapt to autonomous AI, what will separate the organizations that achieve scalable, trusted AI adoption from those stuck in perpetual proof of concept mode?
See, I'll keep it short and simple. I think what will differentiate the organizations of future versus past is who know how to manage intelligence. And intelligence comes from data, from the model they use. So any organization which can really extract and use this to drive business results is what will differentiate. And obviously it requires different desks to be reduced. That's my principle of, if you can manage that, you can manage the growth, you can manage the scale, you can manage the business.
Right. Shalaka, in one concise thought, what will define the successful chief data officer who must deliver both ironclad data sovereignty and breakneck AI innovation over the coming year?
I would say the CDO who is able to think about an architectural framework that will convert the governance as a vehicle for speed rather than a vehicle for blockers.
Well, thank you so much, guys. I think lots of information, lots of insights have been exchanged during this conversation. I thank you all for joining this special panel discussion. Truly appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
a lot
Thank you
of
for
fun.
getting us
Thanks
here.
a lot.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.